Hello and welcome to Business Daily on Trust Television. This is the program where we'll give you all you need to know in the world of business and Nigeria's economy. I am Christiana Amodu Otinya. Now, on today's edition of the program, we will be speaking about issues around election spending. Now, the impact on the economy. With the campaign windows now open, the season has kick-started and will enter into full gear. The challenge of vote buying has also continued to form part of the downsides of Nigeria's electioneering season. According to the Electoral Act, now in a bid to combat vote buying, it has placed a limit on what candidates will spend while criminalizing vote buying and pushing beyond stipulated spending limits. Now, there are spending limits for all the candidates here across board in the election period. However, how is election spending affecting the Nigerian economy? Now, we've heard from experts, even during the recently concluded Monetary Policy Committee meeting, it was alluded that the election period, the election season, is going to push more monies into circulation. Don't forget that Nigeria is already battling an inflation number that is above 20%, according to official figures from the National Bureau of Statistics. As the season kick-starts and politicians hit the ground running onto when we are going to have a new crop of leadership in the country, how should some of the downsides that come with this season be curbed, especially for the Nigerian economy? How will this be addressed? I will be joined by seasoned experts on the program, and they will be lending their voices to how we can address this and the impact of election spending, of course, on the Nigerian economy in the course of the program today. It promises to be a very insightful one, and I trust you do not want to miss out on the package. I'll hold my breaks here, take a short breather. When we come back, the program will continue and you get to meet my guest. Please stay.
That's great. That's good to see you.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve the sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels, leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency.
Welcome back to the program, and thank you for still staying there with us on Business Daily. It's that time of the program where we'll begin the conversation of the day. And today, our focal point is on election spending and how it's going to impact the Nigerian economy. There are already talks in the economic space around mopping up liquidity. We did hear that from the Monetary Policy Committee meeting by the CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele addressing the media and Nigerians, of course, at the end of that meeting. We have excerpts from that meeting, and we will bring it to you now. Please take a listen.
The committee, however, expressed optimism on the economy's recovery in the short to medium term in view of the unwavering support by both the monetary and fiscal authorities in Nigeria. The committee noted the continuing uptrend in inflation for the 7th consecutive month, with headline inflation year-on-year rising to 20.52% in August 2022 from 19.64% in July. Both the food and core component rose to 23.12% and 17.2% in August 2022 from 20.02% and 16.26% in July 2022 respectively. The hike in energy prices, such as rising price of automatic gas or AGO, hike in electricity tariffs, as well as the perennial scarcity of premium motor spirit PMS, contributed significantly to the building of expectations, thus pushing up the cost of transportation and production. Other contributory factors include the broad-based insecurity across the country, which continue to dampen production activities generally, legacy structural factors such as inadequate state of critical infrastructure, high cost of importation of essential grains such as wheat, and increased demand for money associated with the forthcoming electoral campaign season. The ongoing monetary policy tightening by the US Fed is also putting upward pressure on local currencies across the world, with pass-through to domestic prices as investors exit these economies to seek higher yields in US dollar-denominated fixed income securities.
The governor of the central bank there, Godwin Emefiele, is speaking to issues around mopping up excess liquidity in the system, and banks were actually given a deadline, an ultimatum of Thursday, to ensure that CRR in their possession are debited. Now, I want to bring in my guests to the discussion today. I have very close to me here Sam Kagbo. He is a legal practitioner, and he will be looking at this conversation, of course, from the prism of the law, what the law says, and also sharing his views on the impact of election spending on Nigeria's economy. To my far left, Emmanuel Osemeka. He is a political and public affairs analyst. I want to start with you, Emmanuel. Now, you listened, you had a very light smile on your face when the CBN governor was speaking, listening to some of the things he has said there. Now, each time we speak about election spending and how it impacts the Nigerian economy, I want to have your opening thoughts.
Well, we can never overemphasize the fact that the Nigerian electoral process is, revolves around money spending. Some people have said that we've dollarized our electioneering, processes, starting from the primaries where you had, thousands of dollars were shared. All of that, of course, feed into the economy. It affects the economy either positively or negatively, no matter how you're going to look at it. If you also take a cursory look at what INEC came up with when, I think about a week or 2 weeks back, when they talked about the audit report of the political parties in the last election, where they said APC and PDP, overspent, the threshold given. I think one of them spent about 3-point-something billion, the other spent about 5-point-something billion as against the 1 billion threshold. Yes. And I think also that's one of the reasons the National Assembly came up with the increase to 5 billion. So now the law has given all the political parties a threshold of 5 billion, and you have 18 political parties vying for the office of the president. So assumptuously, let's assume that all the political parties spend 5 billion, because you know rightly they will all spend and they will try to outspend each other in every ramification. Assuming they all spend 5 billion each for, you know, within the next 5 months, you can, I mean, you don't want to look at, you don't want to see the effect on the already strained economy. I laughed because, I know, each time I listen to the CBN governor, you know, I'm amazed that you don't hear anything new. You've been in office for 7 years or thereabouts, and there are a lot of issues that can be taken care of easily. One of the major challenges you have today in the economy is the fact that the misery index is worse off. Yes. Another major challenge is that there's no, what do you call it? How do people describe this spending ability?
Purchasing power.
Purchasing power. You know, purchasing power is not there. You have serious inflation, galloping inflation, as the economics will call it. And the only thing we hear, you know, week in, week out, each time the MPC meets, is that they take a look at what the US have done and they just, you know, react. So for me, I think that economics will sit down, a good economics will sit down, take a look at your own local realities, and based on your local realities and anticipate what will happen. Then based on that, you now, you know, take your economic decisions to help the economy. Yes. Today, Nigeria is not spending any money on infrastructure. We are not spending money on infrastructure. Salaries are at the lowest so far. Many are not even getting the salary. A lot of people are going to go into this electioneering period, you know, looking for handouts because there is no other source of income. Businesses are folding on a regular basis. So, you know, that's one of the reasons why I, you know, chuckled, because we are simply helpless, you know, as it is today, until, of course, the next government comes and we hope we're able to get something realistic. Let
me bring Sam Kabo into the discussion now. You also listened to what the CBN governor had to say, and we just had the opening thoughts from Emmanuel speaking about issues around misery index, around how we have high inflation, high unemployment. Purchasing power has been eroded. What are your thoughts on the election spending bracket, and especially as the period begins to enter into full gear?
Let me start by saying, just like you said, that's the Nigerian story. When you talk about misery, poverty, frustration, it's been with us. About the election, he had mentioned that of the presidency, but it's a general election. You're going to have elections for all the 36 states of the Federation, and you're going to also have that for the FCT. You're going to have National Assembly elections. You're going to have state houses of assembly elections. You're going to have all sorts of elections. And for each one of these, there is a threshold coming from the 5 billion, 1 billion, and so forth. But even those figures are themselves not realistic, because at the end of the day, let me give you an idea of what campaign spending is all about. From the day the word go, it's about 150 days to the election, every bit of expenses by the political parties and their aspirants, and their candidates. Yes. Although the, what do you call it now, the Electoral Act wrongfully called them aspirants there, and their own candidates, whatever they spend is what they're talking about there. It's not just about the rallies that you see. The advertisement that you see, the people you have to employ, your campaign councils, the vehicles they would have to spend, the private planes you would have to use to go from state to state, the fuel you have to buy, the food, the logistics to take the campaigns right to the ward level. Yes. That's the money they are talking about. And most of that money is going to be in cash. It's not something
not a bank transfer.
Fine. So how are you going to quantify that? How are you going, at the end of the day, how are you going to tell how much they've spent? Yes. And of course, you are going to rely on their own books, their cash books. You've said that any accountant who falsifies this is going to pay a fine of 3 million. And I'm going to say the accountant is going to work on the figures that is given to him. He's not going to cook up the figures. You are going to supply him the raw materials. He's just going to feed in the books. So realistically, I think those figures are just there for the fulfillment of righteousness, because like he said, we like copying. What others do in some other place, we want to do. But those other places, they have this infrastructure, they have the machinery, and they have the manpower to go into the details from A to C.
Yeah.
Because the moment you start, you must have an account. That account, that's why all monies that you receive, and in any case, it is only in this part of the world that you have people spending their own money. In other places, no. The day you put out yourself as a candidate, you open a purse, and that is where the campaign monies go into. And because they are not money meant for you to go and marry a wife, you have to give a detailed account to the last kobo. If you don't spend all of it, you return it back. You don't spend it. If you do and buy a biro with it, you go to jail. You understand? But we don't have it here. And the money, I'm going to tell you this, because you have excess liquidity because the cash is not going into production.
Yes.
It's just going to float around, you know, easy money. And what that does, it's going to fuel excessive appetite for frivolous things.
Samkabo, I want to hold you on your thoughts. We put together what you need to know about the law, the Electoral Act, what it says about election spending. So we want to look through that. Then I will have you react to that. Now, in terms of what you need to know, Section 88, subsection 2 of the Act stipulates that the maximum election expenses to be incurred by a candidate at a presidential election should not exceed 5 billion naira. Maximum accounts that can be incurred by a candidate for governorship election should not exceed 1 billion naira. Senatorial and House of Representative candidates should not exceed 100 million naira and 70 million naira in election expenses, respectively. In the case of state assembly elections, the maximum amount of election expenses to be incurred by a candidate shall not exceed 30 million naira. And in the case of chairmanship election to an area council, the maximum amount of election expenses to be incurred by a candidate shall not exceed 30 million naira. In the case of councillorship election to an area council, the maximum amount of election expenses to be incurred by a candidate shall not exceed 5 million naira. The Act also states in Section 88, subsection 8, that no individual can donate more than 50 million naira to a candidate. Section 85 of the Electoral Act prohibits any political party from holding or possessing funds outside the country. Quite interesting. I think I'll bring Sam Cabo into the discussion now.
Okay.
How practicable is this? We just reeled out or what the law states and what it stipulates. Do you think these political parties or politicians, so to speak, are going to follow this to the letter?
No. Like I said, that's just for the books. If you ask me, many of them would have even exceeded that amount. It's not realistic. And you put reality into it if indeed you can follow it up to the last kobo. You know the source of funds, and you know how it is spent. But this is cash they are going to hold around. Why do you think the dollar is hitting on the naira the way it is? It is because people don't want trading. If you're going to take the money from the bank, there is a hint that, oh, you've taken this money there, and perhaps if you have somebody who has his ear to the ground, they could have some sort of back-end tracking to trail how you spend the money. But if I have my dollar in my wardrobe, all I need to do, I go to the bureau de change and distribute the cash. If I distribute 5 billion today from my house, how are you going to trace me? How are you going to actually, what would I call it now? INEC. How would INEC, with all the heavy load on its hand going to actually follow up on that to say, oh, I know what you spent yesterday, I know what you are spending today, I know where the money has got into. So it's not realistic. But you see, let me speak on the dangers of all of this, because at the end of the day, of course, just like you said, money, campaigns are money. Money all over the world. Even if you are going to do an election for the Pope, money would have to speak. But money just does not speak in vain and gratis. Whoever gives you money, he's not going to give you that money for the fun of it or because he likes your English. He's investing. So the law anticipates this, and it's more or less saying, let us know who is investing on you so that tomorrow we know why you are making this sort of policies.
I want to bring Emmanuel into the conversation now. You in your opening statement, you spoke about unemployment, misery index, basically. And some experts have said that the weaponization of poverty is driving money politics in Nigeria. That's one. Do you agree with this sentiment, the fact that poverty is being weaponized, and that's why we're seeing this coming calendar year in and calendar year out? And also, do you think money politics has come to stay in our polity?
I will say yes, I agree to a very large extent that the political class are weaponizing poverty in order to gain advantage, you know. Because the truth is that we don't have the actual statistics of the total number of rural voters and the total number of urban voters, because that delineation is not very clear today in Nigeria, as against like what he clearly mentioned when you talk about a lot of the climes where we borrow our practice from. So for example, you look at the primary election between Hillary Clinton and of course Barack Obama. At some point you will hear, oh, Barack Obama has raised $150-something million. And at some point you will hear, oh, Hillary is catching up, her fundraising is getting better. So week in, week out, month in, month out, they are able to track how much has gone into this particular purse, how much has gone into, and how much they are spending. At some point, Hillary Clinton wasn't able to foot her bills. So when she stepped down from the campaign, Barack Obama had to pay some of her bills from his campaign funds because the law allows all of that. But in Nigeria, like he clearly mentioned, if we are very serious about these numbers that we've been put out here, which is, I agree 100% with him, is impossible. I mean, as it is today, you're hearing about people returning 30-something million, 20-something million, money given to them that they don't understand what that money is all about. You can call it politics, you can call it whatever it is, but you give monies for specific reason. And if we have a system of tracking funds, that kind of fund tracking should have been able to reveal clearly that this is corruption or this is not corruption. So what the politicians have done over time is that each time they are elected, and because of the amount of money they've spent, they believe that if they're able to amass as much as possible, they are able to buy the people to their side. And as a result, the people are also not able to hold them accountable. But I see a dichotomy. I see a shift from what used to happen. In this coming 2023 election, I see money failing. Money will fail in 2023. People will bring money, spend money, but they will not get the results they anticipate. I
like this confidence you have in the Nigerian people for a paradigm shift.
Honestly, there is going to be a total shift. And in all honesty, any serious politician today, at whatever level, who sits down and believes that the people's money in his bank account or in his pocket or his wardrobe, if I want to borrow my senior brother's analogy, if he believes that that will give him the vote and the seat or the win, he has another thing coming.
Let me hold you on that thought. I want to come to Sam Kagbo now. Now, we have Emmanuel confidently saying this time around, money is not going to do the work for you. I want you to speak towards, because you have said now that the figures we reeled out, the laws we reeled out might not be so practicable. Do you think that's a failure on the part of the legal system?
No, if the legal system, you mean both the law and the implementation.
Yes.
If that's what you mean, yes. We don't have capacity. You see, we don't have the competencies that are required to realize these aspirations.
Yes, sir.
Much of the laws that we make or the regulations that we make are just aspirational because we don't have the foundation for them and the grit to realize them. It's so simple. They say talk is easy. So you can just simply put it there and say, oh, you have a beautiful law, but how do you implement it?
Yeah.
How are you going to track this? How are you going to monitor this? How are you going to enforce it? Mind you, who is the enforcer here? We are still talking about INEC. And INEC, as you know, his business is on that day. Much of his energy and strength and all the education and effort it's putting in place is to ensure that on that day, the ballot works. But all other things, he does not have the attention for.
Okay, time is never enough, as I always say, when it comes to discussion around election spending. And the conversation is ongoing. So, gentlemen, we hope when we call on you again to come into the studio for us to continue this discussion, we'll have you come in. In 30 seconds, let's just have your final thoughts and his before we close the program.
I think my final thought is simple. The 2023 election is about Nigeria. It's about Nigeria and Nigerians. It's about the level of unemployment that needs to be reduced. It's about the level of poverty that needs to be reduced. It's about the industrialization of Nigeria.
True.
It's about good governance. It's about security. It's not about who has the highest money or who spends the highest money. It's about competence. It's about character.
Yes.
It's about justice. So I think Nigerians, first, what you need to look at is who has the capacity to take Nigeria from where we are today to at least make one giant leap. We're not looking for 20 steps, one giant leap.
Okay. Sam Kagbo, your final thoughts, 20 seconds.
I pray we have a good election.
I pray we have a good election. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for coming to the program to share your thoughts on election spending and how it impacts the Nigerian economy. Emmanuel Osemeka, political and public affairs analyst, thank you so much. And Sam Kagbo, a legal practitioner. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the program.
Thank you.
And that's where we draw the curtains for the program today. Indeed, as I always say, good politics translates to good economics. It's an interwoven relationship that has to work to better the lives of the citizenry of a country. As we look forward to the year 2023, it is essential that the macroeconomic variables are also brought to front burner. I am Christiana Amodu Otiya. Thank you for joining in. Don't forget you can catch up on all our programs on our social media platforms. Enjoy the rest of your day.